Hello everyone, I'm Morgan from Mirror Edge Networks here in Cape Town, South Africa, and welcome to this video, which is an introductory budgetary type video regarding home cinemas. There's a lot of misinformation when it comes to home cinema budgets and how much it costs to develop a room, and I'd like to just touch briefly on what are the requirements to get a room like this functional and what are the bare minimum specifications that I would recommend for a project when we're busy designing a home cinema. There's products which we use frequently, which I'll be referring to in this video, and I'll be noting the pricing in South African retail, including VAT, but what I will do is ask Earvolt to put little denotes in the bottom, which is the rough pricing according to our exchange rate for European pricing or Euro pricing and US dollar pricing, because I know that a lot of our viewers are watching from elsewhere around the world. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope it sheds some insight into what it costs for us to design and build a home cinema here in South Africa. And hopefully, if you're a client here in Cape Town, interior designer, architect, etc., this will help shed some light in what we're trying to achieve and maybe guide you when you're ready to discuss with us a home cinema for yourself or for one of your clients. When engaging with us, we present a home cinema design fee. This is 25,000 Rand starting and working its way up depending on the size of the room, complexity of the design required, and the amount of physical calculations that we need to require for the actual outcome that you are looking to achieve. These take into consideration things like the amount of speakers and the layout that we require for the room, the amount of processing and amplification that we require for the outcome, the projection-based solution and how much light output we require for the size of the projection screen that we're going to be implementing. Depending on how big the room is and the complexities of it, this will have a basic 3D model of the room, but we may even render it so that you can get a visual representation of how the room will look depending on your choice of fabrics, materials, etc., and seating and risers, etc. This gives us a great opportunity to be able to then say, these are the performance levels of the room that we're looking to achieve and how we get there. This also guides us to the more accurate pricing that we're able to work within for the outcome of our project. The projection screen behind me is a 150-inch projection screen. That is the distance measured from corner to corner, opposite, diagonally rather, and this is a very large screen. This screen that I'm standing in front of has a microperforation, which means that it's a vinyl screen that has hundreds of thousands of little dots that are cut into it, so that you get the audio from the speakers playing through the projection screen while still offering a very high quality image from the projector. This is a very large screen and it gives you a really immersive experience. And in this instance, we have a JVC NZ7 projector, which is illuminating this screen. On a 150-inch screen size, the JVC NZ7 is the bare minimum projector that I would use for this requirement, as on a screen like this, it's giving us about 14 to 16 foot Lambert's worth of light output. Very technical, however, basically it means that we will get good quality image and picture from an SDR video playback. So this doesn't meet the requirements for HDR video playback. We'd ideally want about double that, between 30 and 45 foot Lambert's worth of light output from the screen from a projector, which means that we need to increase our amount of ANSI lumens, the brightness of the projector, to get an HDR image from the projection screen. That being said, a projection screen, a high quality screen of about this size, starts at about 100,000 Rand for a 150-inch size screen. There are also additional considerations when it comes to movie watching and content playback. This screen is a 16:9 aspect ratio, so 16 across by 9 up. We do also make considerations and discussions with our clients and with the people that we're working with for whether it's going to be widescreen, a 2.35 wide to 1 or a 2.4 to 1, because there are movies and films which are filmed in wide aspect ratio. We call it CinemaScope, and there are scenes in movies like Top Gun where, for instance, they're playing football on the beach and the aspect ratio is 2.4 to 1, so it's widescreen. And we would consider discussing a projection screen that is a different aspect ratio, or using a screen that has masking either on the top and the bottom, so you don't get the black bars on the top and the bottom, or widescreen with masking from the sides that opens and closes. So if you're going to be watching a lot of movies, You might want widescreen, but for the occasional TV watching or sports watching in the room, it brings the masking in from the sides. Those projection screens require detailed discussions during the design phase, and for that reason I'm not going to quote a price because it all comes down to the exact engineering specifications of the room. But just bear in mind that when dealing with higher performance home cinemas, these are certainly things that we would discuss and consider with you. The JVC NZ7 projector is a great baseline that we recommend to work with, and these projectors are 400,000 Rand. There are additional alternative projectors which will be coming onto the market here in South Africa soon, such as the Sony projectors. Once we have pricing for those, we'll start to recommend them to our clients. We also recommend, when we increase the performance level of the projection-based solution, to start working with the barcode projectors, as these have more specialized lenses that will get us the right throw distance and the right projection width according to how we locate the projector within the room or externally from the room for the size of the projection screen that we're going to be using. A lot of the design considerations which we are working around when it comes to home cinema are defined scientific calculations. There is a certain expectation that the equipment that we're specifying has an emotional attachment to us, but from our perspective and what we try and achieve, that is not true. What we're trying to achieve is guidelines that are determined by the international standards organizations that we are working with that give us the exact criteria that we require from our speakers in the room and also from the projection-based solutions so that we can get the experience that we're expecting. In an instance like this, what we're looking at is from this projection screen to our seating position, we have about 6.5 meters. And so we need to ensure that the speakers that we're using from behind the projection screen give us enough power output so that we have the correct audio playback over the seating position. In an instance like this, we recommend going with speakers that are no less powerful than the M&K LCR S150 speakers, which have a sensitivity of 92 dB. Which means that if we put 1 watt worth of power into the speakers, we'll get 92 decibels worth of audio. Now the requirement that we have in our seating position is 105 decibels worth of audio playback. And what this means is that as we increase the amount of power, several hundred watts worth of power, we will hit the audio playback at that volume at our seating position. The M&K speakers that we recommend, the LCR S150s, will meet these requirements for our seating position in this room. And as I say, this is the starting point of what we would recommend in a home cinema room. One of these speakers starts at about 45,000 Rand, and obviously what we're looking at is an LCR, left, center, right, behind the projection screen wall. And this gives us our audio playback on the front soundstage of this home cinema room. When designing and building a home cinema room, we require speakers which are at about 90 degrees to our primary listening position. These are called our surround speakers. The requirement for these is to hit a high volume output, not as much as the left, center, right speakers. However, we still need to make calculations to ensure that the speakers are going to produce enough audio playback for our seating position. In our home cinemas that we're working with and designing, we're using the M&K LCR S150 speakers, which give us enough volume output and enough dynamic range to be able to hit the reference seating position, hit the volume at the reference seating position. These are about 23,000 Rand per speaker, and obviously we use one of them at each of the surround locations. Then behind the seating position, we have the surround back speakers, and these are placed on the back wall of the home cinema room. Once again, like the surround speakers, we use the M&K LCR S150 speakers in our rear speaker columns, and these give us enough volume as well as dynamic range to hit what we know is the reference volume level at our seating position. When relevant, we do also have the recommendation to our clients to consider front wide speakers. These are in between your LCR speakers and your surround speakers, and they help to fill the gap as audio pans from the front speakers to the surround speakers. We would consider how the construction of the front wall is going to be made, and then pair the same performance of speakers as we use for our surrounds and our surround backs as our front wide speakers. So a good base level for us in our cinemas is for the LCR S150s, but then locate them in such a way that we can angle them to the primary listening position so we get the right dispersion of audio from the front speakers as we pan around. For Dolby Atmos audio playback, we require overhead channels so that the audio that we're listening to is able to move overhead. This requires us to locate speakers in the ceiling above our listening area. And in our home cinemas here in Cape Town, we've been using the M&K IC-95 speakers. These are in-ceiling speakers which have a tiltable tweeter which allows us to angle it to the seating position so we get more detail and definition from the speakers. A pair of these is about 15,000 Rand, and in all of our home cinemas we're recommending a minimum of 2 pairs of them, fronts and rears, so that there is enough audio playback that the movement happens from the front to the back of the room but also from side to side. It is best practice when possible that we actually use 6 overheads. This allows us to have more spatial resolution and detail as the audio plays overhead. To increase the amount of performance for the overhead channels, we would move up to a pair of speakers like the M&K IW150as, which have an angled baffle which allows us to angle the audio down to the listening position, and these have a much higher power rating than the IC-95s. The pricing for a single IW150a is significantly higher than a pair of IC-95s at about 27,000 Rand per speaker. The IW150as are much higher in price, however the performance is far greater. So when it's a high performance home cinema, this would be a consideration for us. However, starting with the IC-95s is a great basis to work from. With regards to subwoofers in a home cinema room, we want to be able to create the chair shaking and deep bass that you would expect in many movies which are on the circuit. For that reason, we recommend in a room this size a minimum of 2 subwoofers, which evens out the amount of bass response within the room. Bass is incredibly difficult to be able to manage, and unless we're starting to deal with very high performance systems like Trinnov waveforming, the minimum requirement that we have is at least 2 subwoofers in the room, optimally placed. In an instance like this, we'd recommend a C15s subwoofer from M&K, which is installed between the left and the center speaker and the right and the center speakers. Those are mounted onto the wall so we get an even wavefront into the room that gives us an excellent bass response. The C15s subwoofers are 65,000 Rand per subwoofer, which includes their external amplification. When we're designing for more rows of seating, the next phase up would be including another 2 subwoofers. 4 subwoofers is really a gold standard before we start dealing with more advanced type of bass management systems. And that would be 2 subwoofers on the back of the room, 2 subwoofers in the front of the room, and this gives us a nice even consistent bass across 2 rows of seating ideally. So that is what we would recommend as a bare minimum for the subwoofers within a home cinema room. External to this home cinema room is the surround sound AVR. Our recommendation and the trusted AVR brand that we've been working with for the last several years is Anthem. Anthem have very high power output for their internal amplification on their AVRs. They also have a great bass management system which is called Anthem Room Correction built into them, and they have a very easy to understand architecture of their surround sound AVRs. We also find that it works flawlessly with our automation control systems. So from that perspective, it is the product that we use as our go-to surround sound AVR. The Anthem MRX 1140, which is our baseline recommendation for a room like this, which has 11 channels of built-in amplification. That means it can handle 7 surround channels and 4 overhead channels natively inside of the AVR, start at 125,000 Rand. Control 4 is my recommended smart home remote control system. Control 4 offers automation, lighting control, as well as room control to be able to turn on and off projectors, turn on and off the amplifier, as well as do volume control. It can be the universal remote control for controlling things like the Apple TV, the DSTV decoder, etc. A handheld remote control from Control 4 with its Control 4 processor is about 35,000 Rand and can increase if we would like to implement things like a touch screen, etc. And that is our go-to and recommended handheld remote control for a home cinema room. Of course, any home cinema room requires seating, and these are Lazy Boy home cinema seats which are built here in Cape Town, South Africa. They are a seat which I quite enjoy. I've been fortunate to work in several home cinema rooms which do have La-Z-Boy home cinema recliners like this. These are motorized seats which are finished in leather, and the guideline pricing for a set of 3 like this is around about 125,000 Rand. Of course, for additional rows we can increase that. They do have additional options such as wood inlays, USB charging sockets. Obviously they've got drinks holders, and these would be my recommendation for when we consider starting to look at seating. I would obviously make a caveat and say that we have often used sofas in home cinemas. I tend to find that to be quite enjoyable. In an instance like this, we've got a back row of motorized home cinema recliners and a front row of sofas, and it's a preference as to which you prefer, but nothing says home cinema quite like a nice pair of motorized recliners for you to be able to sit back, put your feet up and enjoy a good movie. When it comes to building out a room like this, I'm just going to talk about the aesthetic and basic acoustic considerations for internally within the room. We would start the budget around about 200,000 Rand, and this includes things like the speaker column constructions, wall constructions with a basic acoustic treatment, wood slat panels, LED lighting detail, and a bit of a bulkhead construction. I would note though that does not include isolation treatment, which is the acoustic isolation from external. So if you've got a room which is a kids' playroom to one side of the home cinema room and you want to reduce the amount of noise that's coming from that room, that is isolation treatment and requires special consideration and planning, and that unfortunately can't be detailed in a video like this. But in a room like this where we have a front wall construction where we've hidden all the speakers behind it, the back wall construction, side wall construction, overhead and nice lighting package detail, the guideline is around about 200,000 Rand for a room build out like the one that we're sitting in today. There are of course additional costs which are not explicitly broken down in this video, things like cabling, which will be HDMI cables from source devices to the AVR, from the AVR to the projector, speaker cables to all of the different surround sound speakers, power cabling, rack equipment, etc. And a recommendation for a bare minimum for that ancillary costs, cabling, etc. would be about 25,000 Rand. And that is enough to get a basic room wired up and connected up. So in summary, this room that we're seated in today is around about 1.4 million Rand. That includes everything from the speakers, the amplifiers, the projection-based system, the handheld remote control, room build-out, lighting, seating, all the design fees and associated installation. I hope that this is a great introduction and helps give some guidance and understanding as to what it is that we're trying to achieve and how we get there with regards to the pricing for a home cinema room like this. As always, I hope that you've enjoyed this video and you've learned something from it. We will be detailing some higher performance home cinema rooms which are based up in Johannesburg in the early part of 2025. So I'd like to encourage you to subscribe to this YouTube channel so that you don't miss that video. We're looking forward to showcasing what is done on a performance level about 10 times greater than the room that we're seated in today. And I think that'll give some incredible insight into how do we start to design and consider very high performance home cinema rooms. As always, I enjoy designing and building home cinema rooms like this, and we've been very fortunate to be able to deliver several rooms around the Cape Town area. If you'd like to engage with us, please feel free to reach out to me. It'd be a pleasure to be able to show you our processes and work with you on a home cinema room like this.